Bafana Mahungela will continue his bid to get bail in the Alexandra Magistrates Court today. Mahungela is a 21-year-old student and he was arrested in connection with the alleged murder of Johannesburg teacher Kristen Kluytes.
On the 29th of October 2023, a police officer received a call from his control room stating that a deceased female body had been found wrapped in rags and at the Sandton Sports Club at George Lea Park in Parkmore. Her phone was discovered by a man who was jogging around the same area around 8:15, 10 minutes after she was last photographed alive. Around the same time, another man got caught on camera fleeing the scene, and his name was Bafana Mahungela. And a couple of months later, the number one question on everyone's mind is, did he do it or is he innocent? How did he manage to kill the deceased, take off her clothes, put them on, and flee without anyone seeing him? And on top of that, all in the space of 10 minutes. The deceased, Kristen Kluytes, was a 34-year-old high school English teacher at Delta Park High. She was described by her friends and family as someone who loved running, nature, and helping out children with disabilities. So it was no shock that she took part in My Run, an organized weekly event, mostly on Sundays in South Africa, that facilitates running in communities for people interested. This event only costs a once-off 60 Rand lifetime price, with early start times of 7:45 to 8:15, and runs in venues such as parks, wine estates, hotels, nature reserves, and other multifunctional venues. However, on October 29th, 2023, on a Sunday, she would run her last race. According to the CCTV footage, Kristen was seen around the Sandton Sports Club at George Lea Park in Parkmore at 8:04, wearing a sky blue shirt, black pants with a white stripe on the side, white cap, and sunglasses, as she held a cell phone in her left hand with her headsets hanging as she ran. At exactly 8:05, she was taken a picture by a witness called Manuela Denobrega Krobler at the starting point of her third lap. While a couple of meters away, CCTV footage showed a black male in a black t-shirt at the entrance gate of the sports club on his phone, waiting a bit before he entered. This is later discovered to be Bafana Mahungela. And unfortunately, around 8:05 and 8:15, Kristen would be hit in the head, taken down a bushy area in the running embankment, strangled to death, and left fully naked, apart from the rags used to cover her body. Then a fellow runner called Mr. Westphal picked up her phone on the running path, thinking someone had dropped it, and gave it to the timekeeper. After everyone finished their laps, it was discovered that one person did not complete their laps, and they started their own short investigation. They then went back to where the phone was found, and lying in a ditch somewhere, that's when they found a body covered in a sack. And once it was turned over, it was noticed that it was Kristen Kluytes. Seeing what had happened, the timekeeper called the SAPS and the investigation started. The investigating officer, or IO, arrived and found the dead body and was shocked by the details surrounding it. It seemed as if it was murder, robbery, and rape, but except the killer left her car keys and phone. And despite her being naked, there were no clear signs of her being raped. Her body was later removed and sent to a mortuary. During the post-mortem, the cause of death was found to be blunt force trauma to the head by an unknown object, strangulation, smothering, and pressure to the neck that could not be excluded, and there were no signs of rape. The IO then returned to the scene of the crime to look for more evidence, and he was informed that the deceased was walking while others were running, due to her being 14 weeks pregnant. The IO then decided to use CCTV footage around the area to start his investigation. He started at the Sandhurst Preparatory College, which had a camera looking at the western pedestrian gate of George Lea Park, around 50 meters away from where the body was found on the 31st of October. In the footage, they found an African male leaving the vicinity of the body at around 8:49 real time on the 29th of October, wearing a blue shirt, a dark hat, and carrying something black in his left hand. On Monday, the 13th of November 2023, they obtained and downloaded footage from 89 Olympia Avenue, and on the real time, it was estimated at 8:52. That person jumped out of the park over a locked gate. He then heads down Holt Street towards Virginia Road, Parkmore. Then footage from 72 8th Street showed clear footage of the man, and on this footage, you can observe a tattoo on his right arm, a above his right elbow, the shirt pattern identical to the victim's shirt, and the navy blue hat that Bafana was wearing at the beginning. The person's face was visible and he was wearing the victim's sunglasses. The IO then decided to circle back to the beginning to look at footage around the sports club, this time on the eastern side of George Lea Park. This showed a man with the same pants, hat and shoes and tattoo on his right arm, but with a black shirt, and can be identified as the same person, who is seen behind the victim going into the Sandton sports club at the open gate. So this footage was different from the one showed at the west side, because this was an earlier depiction of what happened, and you could see Bafana was following the victim allegedly. Unsure of the police's capabilities, the deceased family hired a private eye named Klaus Malibalo to look into the matter. This private investigator did so well that he eventually started working with the police, and they found out that the suspect was standing under a tree outside 125 8th Street, Park Mall, for 3 minutes on the day of the murder. The PI then asked the IO to go to the above mentioned address and check a stormwater drain, and they found the victim's cap. A look at the surrounding area's CCTV footage found that the same person disposed of the victim's items in the drain and then moved back to see if the items were visible from the road. He then pushed more items into the drain and dropped what looked like clothing, then put it into the left side of the drain and then moved up 8th Street. With this new evidence found, the deceased father sent them a reference picture of what the deceased hat looked like. The hat was then put in an evidence bag and booked into the station. Then finally, on Sunday, 26 November 2023, the PI accompanied the investigating officer to 145 8th Street, Park Mall, the address of the suspect, which was determined to be 1.4 kilometers away from the crime scene, which is about a 30-minute walk. The IO arrested the suspect and found clothing matching the description of the guy in the footage. Bafana was then showed a picture of a person wearing the blue t-shirt, and he confirmed that it was him. He was then locked up and the matter of bail was postponed until December. And despite all the evidence collected against him and his own confession of being the one in the footage, he still maintains that he's innocent and began to explain his side of the story.
One of the things that you've testified about before this court is that you'll correct me if I'm wrong. The reason why you undressed the deceased, actually, the reason why you undressed the deceased is because you were worried, scared of the fact that your fingerprints will actually be taken. You remember that?
In his version, he tells us that he was there on that day because the night prior, he was attending a party in the Alexandra township, and on his way back, he fell asleep in the taxi. Now, because taxis aren't Ubers, he was not told that they had arrived at his destination, and instead the driver drove past it, and when he came to, he refused to go back. So Bafana gets off where he is and begins to walk in the direction of his residence. That happens to be going through George Lea Park. But before that, he claims that he stopped by a restaurant, intending to one day bring his girlfriend. From there, he looked at the menu and took photos, and one of the people at the restaurant gave him the idea to bring his girlfriend. He then left the restaurant shortly after, and on his way, he stopped and noticed something in a sack. He then walked down to it, uncovered it, and realized it was the body of a woman. Thinking she's still alive, he shakes the body, turns it over, and checks if it has a pulse or is breathing. He says he was shocked when he realized she was not breathing and she was dead. And South Africa being a country that's very against gender-based violence and her happening to be a white woman, he panicked. He says he was shocked when he realized the woman was not breathing and panicked. And in that moment, he decided he was going to remove all the pieces of clothing he came into contact with because he didn't want to get blamed for a death. He also admits that he started taking off his black top and putting on her blue one. The reason was never given, even though that shirt was the reason he was easily identifiable. He then picked up the rest of the clothes and ran, then later shoved them into a drain, stepping back from time to time to check if they were visible from the street, matching the detective's assumption. And he went back to his residence and only told about 5 people since, and one of them being a woman he calls Sis Norma, who is his caretaker's girlfriend, and a divorce lawyer. He asked her for some advice, and she told him if he did not do it, then he'd be fine. And then weeks later, he told his father, girlfriend, and 2 other people. He was refused bail on the 29th of December, and the case was postponed to the 19th of January 2024 because he destroyed the evidence by throwing away clothes inside the drain, of which only the cap was retrieved. The judge feared that the members of the public would be in danger if he was released, and not to mention his own safety, with this being a very public case. She also believes that the state provided evidence of premeditated murder, while Bafana's lawyer questions the validity of the evidence because of the state's reluctance to show video evidence and instead opting for pictures and affidavits of accounts from different people and witnesses who never made affidavits themselves, which I consider a good argument. But what do I know? Tell me what you guys think about this in the comment section, and don't forget to subscribe, like, and I'll see you guys next time.